Hello, everyone. This is Don Milne. I'm the founder and director of Stories Behind the Stars, and I'm making this video today because we've had a lot of interest in the last week or so. 400 people have contacted us, expressed an interest in helping out, and that's a lot of people to try to respond to individually via emails. So I'm putting together this quick video so I can share with everyone so they can learn how they can submit their first story. I'm joined today by one of our volunteers, Linda Simpson. And the reason I invited her to help me with this introduction here is she's helping me, especially with these first stories. But before we get into that, I'd just like to ask Linda a couple of quick questions. First of all, Linda, maybe a little bit of background on who you are. And then second question, maybe indicate why you decided to help with Stories Behind the Stars. And just to interject one thing before you answer those questions, I was going back and looking at my database. And Linda joined this project on July 4th of 2020. So she's been doing this for almost 2 years. And she's one of the first 400 people that helped out, not one of the last 400 that have been interested in helping us here over the last week or so. So Linda, just slightly, if you could share a little bit about your background, and then second, if you could tell us why you decided to join the Stories Behind the Stars project.
I've always been interested in genealogy, mainly because I was originally born in Montreal, Canada. And I've been researching my family since we came to the States when I was old enough to understand how to do it. And I've also always been a bit of a volunteer. We were in Boy Scouts for 10 years. I'm on the advisory board of the U.S. Gen Web in the United States. And it's just I saw your advertisement, as it were, almost 2 years ago on a podcast. Actually, she's out of Montreal, and as soon as I read it, I emailed you, and here I am.
Yeah, and it's been very helpful. And when you said you're a volunteer, that's definitely the case for Stories Behind the Stars, because you've been volunteering to help guide our new volunteers to get their first stories reviewed. You're also volunteering to be one of our directors for the Arlington National Cemetery Project. And now you're volunteering to help me out with what we're calling our Bomber Crew project. And so I just wanted to briefly go over what's entailed with that. So the first thing we need to do in order for this Bomber Crew story to work is we have to get a group of names that are all from the same bomber crew. And sadly, there's a lot of group graves that have multiple people buried in them, all from the same plane crash. And so the first thing you've been helping me with is identifying some of those group graves. And because you're working on one of the Arlington sections, there are some group graves, and I think you're working on section 12. Can you tell me a little bit about that process, how you find the group graves?
Sure. I don't know how other people do it, but I generally will look at the section and grave numbers. Like the section number, of course, is always 12, but the grave numbers will basically tell you a group grave. Sometimes they're lumped together, that makes it easy, and sometimes they're not. But generally, if you go and research at Find a Grave, say, it will give you the names of most of the time of the other crew members. And then I start filling in the information. So later on, the writer can come and write something and doesn't have to start from absolute scratch. Okay,
so you've got, let's say you've identified, say it's a B-17, which normally had 10 flyers on it. The next thing we're doing is we're finding an experienced writer, someone that maybe started with our project during Pearl Harbor or D-Day, or maybe way back when we did the Utah project. So they've done a number of stories, maybe even stories of someone who was in the Army Air Forces or a Navy flyer. And we're asking them to contact you so you can send them the bomber crew list, and then they can pick a name. So could you give me maybe an example of how that's been working so far?
Sure. The way I do that is because I've been with the project a while, I know who some of what I consider to be some of the better writers, and a lot of them have military backgrounds. So a lot of times I call on them, or a lot of times they'll just email me and say, hey, I have one in particular, I believe he lives in California. He likes to do the group graves, the Navy. Uh, so, and then there's others that have no military background, but they're really good writers, and they want to help, and they do a fantastic job.
Yeah, that's great. And the reason we're introducing this new way for new writers to get started is there's a lot of stuff can be kind of overwhelming sometimes. So you've got this experienced writer that you've been in contact with. You get them a list of the people from this plane. They choose one name from that plane. They write a story about it. Then they're sending it back to you. Now you have a story that part of it's going to be the same pretty much for everyone else that's on that plane. But now what you can do is when we get a new writer, you've got up to maybe 9 different names from that same crew that you can contact. So we've been starting to send these to you this way. So what's the process at this point? What are you doing to take it from this point?
With the new writers, I try to, if it makes sense, to match them up. A lot of times you can't because they're new. But I had one in particular that was interested in if there was a crew member that was from Pennsylvania, possibly, and I found one. And there was a model story was already written by one of the experienced writers. So he was very happy to be able to do that. I try to kind of, if it makes any sense, sometimes just their email back will tell me that maybe they need a little bit more help, or, well, would you be interested in maybe, like what state? And that helps a lot.
That's good. That's great. You're able to accommodate maybe some special requests if we can from those other individuals that were on that plane. So at this point, our volunteers should be able to use the boot camp material plus the sample story that our experienced writer has written to write that first story. And it might take a little bit longer the first time, but we're thinking realistically to write this obituary, we're thinking like 2 to 3 hours. At this point, Linda, you're still involved because you're also, as I mentioned earlier, the person who handles the review process to get someone's first story reviewed. Can you talk a little bit about how the process for that?
Sure. When I assign somebody a story, I try to put it all in there that, after you write the story, it needs to come back to me to be reviewed. But I'm also very careful to make them understand that if they have absolutely any questions or concerns, please contact me. And if I don't know the answer, I will find it. And we also have some great reviewers. There's 2 or 3 in particular that should do this as a job because they're just fantastic about it. I mean, really, they should be paid. But so, I haven't had any problems with when they come back with the critique, and it's always very helpful. And we just got a few new reviewers, and they've been great about, should I do it this way? Should I do it that way? They seem to really care. We've had a few drop out, but that's basic for any organization. Right. It's been really good so far.
Okay, well, that's kind of what I wanted to cover today. So in summing up, we've got some opportunities for different people at different levels of involvement. You might have some people that are experienced writers. We can definitely use your help to write that first story from a bomb group. Obviously, if you're new to this project and you want an easy way to do your first story, please contact Linda when you're ready to participate at this level. She'll get you a name from that bomber crew. And Linda is also helping with the review process. And so what we have is a rotating group of reviewers. So if you want to be one of our reviewers, and we're just asking you to take like 15 minutes to look over the story. And if you've seen a few of these stories, how they're written, we're basically looking for that 500 to 1,000 word obituary content. And just a few things, if you've done a few of these, that you'll be looking for that someone that's brand new wouldn't know to do it that way. So that's super great to have those reviewers help out. So at that point, after that first story is reviewed, people can contact me again. We'll get you plugged into maybe the Arlington National Cemetery project, or maybe a state project, or maybe you have a project independently that you want to work with on your own. Those are all great ways to help. So I'm hoping that this video with Linda's help has given you some ideas on how you can move forward in participating with Stories Behind the Stars. And as I find time and as it can be helpful to further educate people on how to participate, we'll be making more of these videos. Thank you so much, Linda, for participating. And maybe we'll have you on sometime in the future if there's something else related to what you're working with that you can help educate our listeners to. Thanks so much, Linda.
Okay, thank you so much, Don. I hope it helps.
Okay. Yeah, it did. Bye, everyone.